Hi everybody. We're going to use GRASS 7.6.1 to create a classification for clear-cut areas around Mount Rainier in the state of Washington. So basically you have two ways of classifying Landsat images or any land resource satellite. Using this software, we're going to be doing a supervised classification. In which we take an image and we train the image on how to process all the different reflectivity values of each band from the satellite that we're interested in. There's also an unsupervised classification process in which you take an image and you basically tell the software, I want you to go out and find me 10 different occurrences of something. And it will go through the entire scene and it will classify what it thinks are 10 different things. Sometimes that works, sometimes that doesn't. But the supervised classification allows you to have more power, in which you can go and delineate such as agricultural fields and say that this field is corn, this field is wheat, or this field is soybeans. And the software will use that classification signature and go through your entire scene or your study area and classify the image based on that information that you entered in. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to do a supervised classification for forestry clear-cut areas around Mount Rainier in Washington. So hopefully this will show you how to set up a location and bring in data so you can do your analysis. So let's get started. This screen right here is the GRASS Open Flash. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a new location. And we're going to call this Rainier Foresting, sorry. All right, so we enter that for the project location. And then we're going to read projections from a georeference data file. Basically, we want it to define the location by the geography that is embedded in the actual image. So you click on the read project and datum terms. Then we have to select a georeferenced file. Basically, what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to navigate to my working GIS data directory where I have my Landsat image, and we're going to choose the Puget Sound image from 2016 because that's the actual image that we're going to be classifying. And you see we have our list of different Landsat scenes of each band for that particular date. I'm just going to pick the band 1 as just so I can get its geography, and we open that and then we go next, and it's going to import, it's going to set up the location based on that geography. All right, so you just okay through some of these notifications that's saying the success of bringing that particular geography in. All right, so now we have down here, we have a location called Rainier Foresting. And so we're going to start our GRASS session and allow GRASS to start. I have to apologize for a couple things. There might be some traffic noise in the background. They're using our road for a detour for a highway. All right, so here our GRASS session starts. We have our display and we have our layer manager. We are going to do we're going to import images that I've already downloaded from the Earth Explorer from the USGS. And we're just going to do a simple raster import. We're going to bring in a raster import with reprojection. And so you're going to select the directory that you want, and then you're going to browse to the directory where your data resides. So minimize that, open my D, go down to my GIS data, and then we'll go down to my Landsat. And then I have a directory. I have a Puget Sound from 2016, 2017, and the Puget Sound that I have that doesn't have a date after it, that's actually June of this year. But we're going to classify the 2016, and then we're going to come back and classify the 2019 based off the signatures that we create from the 2016. So 2016 will be my first working directory. Once that populates this field here, then you need to check all the different images that you want to import. And these are all the different bands of the Landsat 8 image. So we'll get those imported. This might take a while. If you see me pause or speed up the videos because my computer is taking longer to do something. Okay, so they finished importing those different images into our project. So we're going to close the import raster data window because we're done for that. And we're going to change our layer manager back over to layers so we can see all the different bands that it brought in. You notice the B9, B8, B7, B6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 11, 10, and 1. Those are the Landsat bandwidths, not bandwidths, the spectral bands from the Landsat 8 satellite. 2, 3, and 4 being the visible light range, 5 being the near infrared, 6 being the mid IR, 7 being the longer wave IR, 8 being the panchromatic. So you have the different bands. Alright, so and it also displays them each in the display area, one on top of each other. Right now it's showing one of the thermal bands. Alright, so let's get this set up. So first thing you have to do is you need to create a compilation area. And we're going to keep getting this little window for a while, so we'll just get rid of that. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to set up a compilation area, the main geography that we want it to deal with. So we're going to go to settings, we're going to go computational region, and we're going to set the region. This brings up a dialog for setting up your compilation region. We are going to set region to match a raster map. A raster map are these things that are showing up in our layer manager. Each one of those is a raster map. And it doesn't matter which one that we use for our region because they all have the same geography. So we are going to do the pull down, and we're just going to pick band 1. We just want its geography, and then we are going to run. So that sets up the geography of our location session. So once that's finished, you just go ahead and close that window. Now what we have to do is we have to create a mask. If you notice, see this black area here of the image? It's not actually part of the image. It's just the background behind the image. This gray area in this thermal image is actually the satellite image. But this black area, if you don't remove this black area, it will try to class that as well. So we need to create a mask to hide this black area or turn it white so it doesn't, it looks at it as it doesn't exist. So we're going to come over here to the raster menu, go down and select mask. It brings up another dialog box. And what we need to do is we need to select a raster image or a raster map to use as our mask. Well, just like we did for our computational region, we are going to select the same band because we just want the geography of the actual image itself. It doesn't matter which band you use. I'm going to use band 1. And then for raster value to use as mask, change that asterisk to a 0. Then click on the Create tab and click Create Inverse Mask. That's going to turn the black area into white. Once you have that, you select Run and let that happen. So it's converting that image as a mask in itself. And that's done. Once that's done, now you notice up here, let me close this window. Now you notice that this area that used to be black is now white. So now when you do your image processing classification, it will not mess with this white area anymore. Okay, so now the next step is that we need to enhance the images a little bit for their brightness. Some of these come out pretty dark, so we need to enhance some of these. We are going to basically concentrate on band 5, band 6, and band 2. 5 being the near IR, 6 being the mid IR, and the 2 is actually the blue band in the visible light. We're going to use these 3 to help us for our land classification around Rainier. So we need to kind of lighten up those images so they come in a little better. There's another process that you can do when you're doing satellite image processing with Landsat, but we're not going to talk about that in this particular video. This is just a workflow of setting up a supervised classification. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go up here to imagery, and we're going to go to manage image colors, and we are going to color balance, enhance the RGB. The dialog comes up, and you want your red channel, we are going to pick band 5. Green channel is going to be band 6. And the blue channel, we're going to use band 2. And we are just going to run this. Basically, that kind of lightens up. It takes any darkness and lightens those areas up, but it retains the colors or the reflectiveness from the sensor itself. It's not really hurting or changing your image. It's just making it lighter, easier to see. Okay, when that's finished, you can go ahead and close that window. The next step is we are going to create an image of what we want to use for our analysis. We're going to create an RGB image using bands 5, 6, and 2. So you're going to go up to Raster, and you're going to manage colors, and you're going to come over here and create RGB Composite. For our red band, we're going to put in the near infrared, which is 5. For our green band, we're going to put in the mid IR, which is band 6. And then for the blue band, we're actually going to use the visible light blue band from Landsat, which is band 2. Then you're going to give it an image, an output file name, and we're just going to call this, let's call it Rainier. Oops. Let's call it Rainier RGB 562. So you know, if you ever see this, what bands that you're using. And we're going to select Run. Now this is going to create another image, and it's going to put in our tree, and you will see what this area looks like using this band combination of 5, 6, and 2. Okay, when that's finished, you close this screen, and you notice over on the left, it's added Rainier RGB 562 in our table, in our layer tree. And in the display window, you see the actual image, satellite image, using those 3 bands from Landsat. Now, I'm going to turn off these underlying images because we don't really need these right now. Alright. The next step is we need to define a study area. You can do the whole scene if you want to. The only thing is it usually takes a long time, very long time, depending on your computer. But what we're going to be doing is we're going to concentrate in the Mount Rainier area and this little area to the left of it, or to the west. There are some signs of clear cutting in the forest. So bands 5, 6, and 2 are really good for doing timber management. And forestry companies will use satellite image to monitor their properties and what they're clear cutting, what they're using for logging and things like that. And so 5, 6, and 2 is a good image because it shows really good contrast. So what we're going to be doing next is we're going to define our study area. So we need to create a vector map. So we're going to come into our display, and we're going to change this to say Vector Digitizer. So that brings up our image again. And then we're going to come over here, and we are going to select New Vector Map. And then it asks for a name. And so since this is a study area, we're going to call it Study Area. And then before you hit OK, make sure that Create Attribute Table is also checked. So click OK, and you'll notice on the left side over here we now have, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot one thing. When this attribute table manager comes up, just close it. There's nothing to do there. But you see Study Area shows up in our layer tree. Now we come back over to our display area, and we are going to define our geography that we want to use for study area. You can come up here and you can use the zoom tool, and we're just kind of zoom in here in this area around Mount Rainier. Just a closer look so we can make our area. Then you'll come up to the polygon icon, push that, and you're going to define a box. So you'll click here, and then you'll come up wherever your study areas on your particular image that you're working with. We're just going to make a rectangle right about here, end the box, and then right click will finish it, and then you get this area. And define attributes, we don't have to do that right now, so just click Submit. So here's our study area polygon. So when we start doing our analysis, it's only going to analyze the image that's inside this box. Then come up to this this little Quit Digitizer button in the display, click that. Do you want to save your changes? Yes. And then that returns us back to our regular display. Now come over to the tree and make sure that study area is gray. That means it's selected, and right click your mouse. And then you're going to come down to set computational region from selected map. So our polygon turned gray, telling us that this is our study area. Now, in order to classify an image, you need to create what is called a group. A group is a name or a set of criteria for doing your analysis. So first we're going to create a new group. That will pop up periodically. Sorry about that. So you're going to go to imagery over here on our layer manager. Go to imagery, develop images and groups, and then create edit group. If you already have groups selected, created, you don't have to create a new group. You can use an existing group for doing analysis, but we're creating one for the first time here. So we're going to type in a name, and I'm going to call this PS LSAT. Let's go 2016. And then we're going to click this add button so we can add in all the images, all the bands that we want to use for this particular group. And so you click the add button, and you'll see a list of all the bands that we imported at the beginning of this entire process. So all you're going to do is you're going to click all the bands that you want to use for analysis. So I'm going to click bands 1 through 7. 8 you don't really need because that's panchromatic. 9, 10, and 11, you're getting into the thermal bands, and we don't need that for classification. So I'm just picking bands 1 through 7. So that adds those bands to this list. Now we have a group, which is PSL SAT 2016, but I want to create a subgroup because we can use a group of these 7 bands, but I can actually create a subgroup that has only a few of these bands. So I'm going to click Edit Create a Subgroup, and this is going to come up. You just say yes for that and yes to that. And you're going to enter in the name of your subgroup. And I'm going to call this subgroup Clear Cut 2016. Now, I can come back and go to to create another subgroup. I can call it Clear Cut 2019. But I can use the same setup for the group. So we're going to do Clear Cut 2016 as our subgroup, and I'm going to select all these bands, and I'm going to click OK. So now we have a group and a subgroup. Now we start our image classification process. We're going to go to Imagery, and then we're going to go down to Classify, and then we're going to go to Interactive Input for Supervised Classification. This is going to bring up our classification tool, and here we can size it so we have a little bit more space to work with here. First thing that you do in the classification tool is you come over to select imagery group. That group and subgroup that you just created in the last step, now you're going to activate them for this process. So here you have the name of the imagery group. You down click and you'll see that they'll show up automatically. There's our PSL SAT, and then our subgroup. You'll see Clear Cut 2016, and then you're going to click OK. So that group and that subgroup is now set up for this process. Now we need some kind of picture here to play with. So what we're going to do is we're going to add the same bands that we used to create this image up here. So you're going to click on the Add RGB Map layer, and then just like you created this RGB image up here, you're going to select the same bands as you did. So we're going to select the band 5 for the red, band 6 for the green, and band 2 for the blue. And then you're going to click OK. And it's going to put that image in the spot, but only the portion that falls in our study area. Now, we need to create a table that holds all the different classifications that we want to make. So you're going to come over to the class manager. You're going to click that. And here is when you're going to add your classes. Now, I need to talk about this a little bit. This is just a tutorial to get you up and going in doing a supervised classification. This is not meant to be very precise. If I was doing real research in this particular case, I would be very particular on the name of the classes that I want, the color of the classes, and how I digitize my training areas. So we're just going to do basic things here. We are going to create a class for this magenta color over here, which is basically snow and ice on top of the mountain. We're going to create a class for existing forest growth. We're going to create a class for water, such as this lake down here. If you notice at the end of some of the glaciers up on Mount Rainier, this area right here is kind of barren. It's an old lava flow or an old mud flow, and nothing is really growing there. So we're going to create barren areas. So let's add a class. Click on class and give it a name, and we're going to call this, we're going to call this forested. And we're going to click a color and let's go green. Let's go forest green. Then we're going to add another class, and we're going to call this class clear cut. And give it another color. In my clear cut areas, we're going to make that a lighter green. Then we're going to add another class. And we're going to call this class water. And gee, let's make it blue. Let's make it light blue. That way it will be easier to see. Then we're going to add another class for our snow and ice. So we'll call this ice snow. And we're going to make our ice snow white. Duh. And we're going to add one more class. And we're going to call this, well, actually we're going to add two more classes. We're going to call class 5, we're going to call that barren, for barren ground. And we're going to make that kind of a tannish orange looking thing. And one more class. And that class is, we're going to call this other. We're not really interested in anything other than forested and clear cut. So having an other, you can group a whole bunch of stuff that you don't want to really take the time to figure out exactly what it is. So we have some areas, like we're going to be concentrating on the area right here, because this light green are clear cut areas, and this orange, in this band combination, healthy vegetation shows up orange in shades of orange to light browns, and clear cut areas show up in this really, really bright green. But if you notice up here, we have a lot of light green. Well, this is a developed area. There's houses and buildings, commercial properties and stuff like that. We're not really going to class each individual building site as a class. But if you're doing this in the real world and you wanted to be really precise, you would create more classes and be more particular when you're doing your digitizing for your test bed. All right, so we have 6 classes: forested, clear cut, water, snow and ice, barren, and other. So close that. Now it's time to start digitizing all of your training polygons. We're training this image of known information. Now, if you're really doing your research, or if you really have done your research, you should have manuscripts where you've actually gone out and done some field study, like visit some of these sites and say, yes, that definitely is a clear cut. This is definitely ice and snow. This is definitely water. Okay, these are buildings or whatever. You should have some sampling that you've gone out in the real world and established known information, controls in this case. That's what we're teaching this image is. Let's pretend that we have a manuscript, a whole bunch of plots, and we've made our controls. We know the geography of our test area. Now, I don't live in Washington, so I don't have those, so I'm going to make some assumptions in this tutorial. So, we are ready to digitize some of our training spots. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to come over here to your list of classes, and you want to pick where you want to start. Well, snow and ice is a pretty good place to start. So we're going to make some polygons that defined snow and ice. So you click on your polygon tool right here, and then you can zoom in and zoom out of your map as you need. So we're going to zoom into Mount Rainier. And you notice all the magenta, that's snow and ice. So now we're just going to digitize some polygons that say anything, any pixel values that are inside this polygon belong to snow and ice. So basically what I'm doing is so there's one polygon that's classified as snow and ice. Now, I'll be a little bit more careful on how I do it on this one, just so I can tell you. So I'm coming over to this ice, and we're going to left click. Then we're going to make our boundary by keep left clicking all these different vertices, and we're going to make a polygon that we think is representative to the ice and snow. See, we've got a little bit green in there. I don't really want to grab that, so I'll just kind of go around it. So I'm going through this ice and snow field, and I'm grabbing all of the reflectances of that image band and saying these are all going to be classed as snow and ice. Now you get to the vertice right before closing. All you need to do is right click your mouse button and it closes the polygon. So we're going to come down here. Here's a place down here. So we'll delineate around this area to include all the different known reflectances that you want to use to class. All right, we got some pretty fuzzy stuff here, so I'm going to make a real small polygon here. A lot of little triangles sometimes helps. So I'll make one down here, and then I'll right click back, anything inside that triangle, anything over here, anything in that triangle. So you get the picture. Now here's some nice purple up here that we need to bring in. So we'll bring that purple in there because that's probably snow. Actually, that's probably ice, and then the snow is the lighter stuff. All right, so we got some snow and ice classified. So let's kind of zoom out here, and we're going to go classify our next thing. If you click this magnifying glass with the pluses on the two corners, that means zoom out to the entire study area. All right, so the next thing that we're going to classify is the water. So you change your classification to water and zoom in. Let's zoom into this lake down here. Now you'll notice in a lot, see how dark that is? That's black. That water is clear enough. That water's so clear that it absorbs the infrared band of the satellite image. So that's why it shows up kind of black. But if you look at the east end of the lake, it's kind of blue. Well, there's probably some sediments inside in this water that's reflecting that back up to the satellite. That's why it looks different. But it's still water, so you need to classify this blue as water. So select your polygon tool and go into your lake. It's hard to see a black cursor on a black background almost. So just go into your lake and make a polygon around that and say all that color is water. Then do a couple other spots in the water, because you want to get as good information into the process as possible. So just there could be some variations in this color, in this water, in the reflectant values of the water. So it's good to try to get a good sampling of all the different possibilities that could have. All right. Now, one other thing I like to do is I also like to you got to remember, Landsat image is 30-meter resolution. That's 99 feet, between 90 and 100 feet. It's not very, what's the word I'm looking for? A high resolution. All right. But you'll notice that this river coming into the lake, we can see that. We can see the river. And there's rivers throughout this scene that are that small. So what I want to do is I just want to grab a sampling of these pixels so it can render those throughout the entire study area. So make sure we're still on water, go over to our polygon tool and pick some, just make some areas here going through our water, through our river, that we think, we're pretty confident that that is the actual water of the river. So now I have a polygon that grabs some of those colors so it can classify that river as water. And then we're going to zoom back out. So we'll call that good for the water. There's actually a lake somewhere that has a different color blue, but I just don't see it right this second. But I would zoom into that, and it's kind of like the blue that was at the east end of this lake. But you want to make sure that you grab all the different features that you believe are the same thing, and you need to get those into that class. That's why it's really important that you have really good field notes when you come back to do this. Okay, so let's go to our next class. So we've done ice and snow, and we've done water. Now we're going to go into some of these barren areas, and we're going to make some test polygons of those. So let's go to the end of some of these alpine glaciers here. So you'll notice this flow right here. It's probably an ancient mud flow from a previous eruption. All right, we're going to classify all that as barren. So select your polygon tool, make sure you're on barren class, and select your polygon tool. And let's just make a polygon going through this area here. Just using that left mouse button to trace your areas. And you can get more precise. It's totally dependent upon the research that you're doing. Here I'm just getting an idea. Okay, I'm not being too particular in the tutorial. So we'll come kind of around here. You know, obviously I could be making some mistakes, and you know, make sure that I got to make sure that my research notes, my field notes are accurate, so I can portray this information as accurately as possible for whoever my customer is. In this case, it would probably be the forestry company. Or maybe I'm an employee of the forestry company. Now, so we got some of these outcroppings that are going to be classified, and let's here's a good area. We'll make that a small triangle, grab some of those values. We'll use our pan tool, and we'll kind of pan over here and see what other areas we think we could classify as barren. So we'll go back to my polygon tool. Here's a little area on top of the mountain that could help us out. Here's a little area here that could probably help us out. And let's see. Anyway, I think that'll be fine for now. This is not going to be totally accurate, but it just gives you a workflow. All right, so let's zoom out and see what other areas we can call barren. All right, so we have some creek bed. Some of these flanks of the mountain, they show up kind of green, but not necessarily is that forest. That could be just we can call you can create a class called, you know, grass and all that kind of stuff, but we got barren, other, whatever. So we're going to zoom into this little area here, and some of this stuff in our scene is most likely barren ground. So I'm going to create a couple test sites up here. We're going to call that barren. Some of this down here, actually that looks, well, I can tell you right now, some of that's going to show up as other when we create our other class. So we'll create some of that. Anyway, like I said, your field notes are extremely important, making this process work the way that it's supposed to. All right, so let's go back out to our study area and let's change class. So we have not done forested and we have not done clear cut. Those are the two that are most important to our study. So we're going to save those for last. We're going to go to the other. And we're going to come into this area here in the upper left-hand corner. Now, some of this green right here looks like some of this clear-cut area, but that could be just local farm fields that don't have any plants on them, because the green is really soil. It's showing you bare soil, maybe a little bit of grass growth on them, but for the most part it's barren land. It's ground without the trees. Now in this area here you have maybe some little farm fields that don't have any crops on them or something like that, some bare ground. But what we're doing is we're going to tell GRASS GIS that when you do your studies for all of these clear-cut areas, you take into consideration the range of values that fall in this area, and don't classify this light green with the same as this light green over here. So we got other selected. Select on our polygon tool, and we're going to call, oops, you are trying to create a training area. Oh, I'm outside of the study area. Duh. Okay. All right. Well, duh. I didn't pay attention to my red line here. All right. So here's my study area. We're going to make our polygon over here. So you notice that all of this is pretty suspect of being not forested ground. And most likely this over here is probably some commercial growth or something like that. Over here you probably got some basic farm ground. And I'm trying not to touch the water because you notice we got some water there. Alright. Now this part, we're going to keep this, we're going to leave that alone. I bet that's some kind of borrow pit, some kind of mining activity there. But anyway, we're going to choose some of those. Alright, let's go back out to our study area. Now, this little gray area down here, that's probably some commercial activity that's going on down here, so we'll zoom in there. Make sure that we're on other, and then we're going to make a polygon around this activity to say, hey, you're other. You ain't no forest. Let's go down here, grab some of these, come up, come over, and let's go ahead and end it there. If you were doing this in real life, you'd be a little bit more precise than I'm being. I'm going to create a little one here. Add that. This looks like some kind of strip there. Alright. Okay, so let's go back out to our study area. So now we have barren, we have ice and snow, we have water, and we have other. Now we're going to concentrate on the meats and potatoes, which is our forest area and our clear-cut area. So let's do forested first. So change your class to forest and zoom into the flanks of the mountain. Alright, this brown, that's not ground, that's healthy trees right there. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a polygon that comes around all of this, hopefully not touch too much of that light green that's probably clear cut. We're going to take our polygon, we're going to go up this ridge, over, yeah, we're grabbing a little bit of road I can see, but that's okay. Some of the little greens won't matter because it really takes into effect all the colors that fall into that area. It doesn't necessarily mean if there's little light spots in there that it will classify that as forest. Landsat image knows what it's doing. Alright, so this is forested here. We've got some tiers. You notice, you see some of these contour lines. Those are tiers from some kind of activity. So we're going to make a line around that, finish that. So that's forested. This is forested. Remember, check your notes. Check your field notes. Those are the most important things that you have when you're doing these test areas, these training zones. I'm going to call this light green up here. That's probably not clear-cut area. That's probably just lighter fauna. I want to come up here. I could tell you right now that the way that I've been classing these right now, these light green areas along the mountain range, they'll probably show up as other when it gets done doing its analysis. But anyway, you want to pick your forested areas. Grab some samples of forest and let's move around, get some more forest, because could be some different stuff. Polygon tool, this is a forest line here. This is a forest line here. Like I said, study notes, your field notes are very important when it comes to creating your class information. Now, if I lived in this area, I would be getting in my truck and going to these areas and have some kind of manuscript to base my stuff on. Now let's get some of this forest that's up in the mountain area here. I'm just left clicking my mouse for the vertices, right clicking to close the polygon. And let's put a little triangle here, get some of those values in there. Some of this over here. Let's go around that green. So you can be really precise when you're doing these areas. Now let's pan over to where we have some clear cut in our scene. All right, I need a forest polygon right in the middle of this stuff right here. Okay, and I'm still not satisfied yet. I want some more forest area because I want to try to be as precise as I can. Of course, we're only training right now. We've got some of this that's right along this ridge. I don't think that's really forest. It's probably more sage-oriented type of growth. Now, okay, so I think we got enough for forest right now. It's not 100% accurate, but it's close enough. Now I really want to concentrate on these suspected clear-cut areas. Let's say I went out with my notebook and yes, these fields are actual, these plots of land are actual forested. They've cut down the trees for logging. But if you notice, in some cases like right here, I bet that was clear-cut quite a few years ago and they replanted some trees. So that could be some new growth pine. And then the green is where they've farmed it out or forested it out in the past year or so. All right, so you can look at the pattern and really look, and you can create more than one class for clear cut. You can actually say clear cut last year, clear cut the year before. You know, they may not have trees fully grown, but you can classify each one and be more precise in classifying clear cut. What I'm looking for is the fresh clear cut areas within a certain time frame. All right, so we're going to change our class to clear cut and we're going to make some polygons around our clear cut areas. So there's our first one. All right, so now we can zoom in and get a better picture of the clear-cut areas. So click our polygon tool. I know that's clear-cut. And we're going to get all these values that are in this area. Now, it'll be okay grabbing some of that little gully there. It's not going to really matter too much. It would if you're really being precise, but we're just doing a training session right now. So we're going to grab this, bring that up there, come over there, finish that off. We're going to go around this clear cut area. This area here. This looks a little different over here. I tell you what, image processing is an extremely satisfying way to make a living. It really is. just get to see so much geography. I hope I'm not sounding like Bob Ross in painting. But anyway, so we're just trying to classify what we believe is clear-cut areas. And like I said, I do not live in this area, so I don't have the luxury of going out and doing an actual field measurements. But you can get pretty darn close, especially when you've been looking at satellite images for years. Alright, so I say some of this duller green. Let's add some of that. Take some of this. Definitely down here, it's a little different shades. Now, like I said, if you're doing this for pay, you're going to be a little bit more precise in doing your creating your training polygons. And that's what these are called, training polygons. You're training the image software to know what to look for when it's trying to class the whole thing. Let's some of you guys that are probably OCD are probably going nuts right now. Sorry about that. I'm pretty OCD when it comes to my cartography, but all right, I know that this is probably clear cut. Let's finish that one. There's some nice bright green. That means there's nothing on that one. Let's go over here. Yeah, it's a little grayed out. There's probably some new growth in this area. Probably did that probably last year. Okay, and let's say this is kind of suspect to me right here in this area. I could be wrong, depending on my field notes, which I don't have. All right. I think let's go back out and see what we look like. Sure. We've got a bunch of polygons down here. Let's go up a little bit and see what we got up in this area here. Turn on our polygon tool, make sure we're still on clear cut. We're going to add this area here. And let's take that back home there. Now see, if you look, this patch right here was probably done a couple years ago and it's starting to grow back. Let's go around that. That probably is pretty significant there. We can bisect that. We don't have to go all the way into it because it looks pretty uniform. That little waterway we don't have to really deal with too much. But anyway, you can be precise. You can have, like I said, multiple classes for clear cut. You can call them clear cut 1, 2, 3, and 4 and say, I believe that this is brand new, class 1, class 2 is last year, class 3 is the year before that. Okay, you can make a history of the clear cut. I see some other forestry stuff, some other forest, so I'm going to change this to forested, and I'm going to add another polygon right up in here. Gives me a different value range that we can use for classification. Alright, so let's go back out. Alright, so that's creating your training polygons. You can create as many as you want depending on how accurate you really want this to be. So once you finish digitizing all your training polygons, it's time to save these polygons as a vector product. or a vector layer. It's not going to show up as a vector layer, but we are going to come up here to our export training area to a vector map. And you're going to give it a name, and we're going to call this clear cut training. Okay, and we're going to click OK. Clear cut training. I got to remember that. And so we have 67 training areas in 6 classes that were exported to our clear cut training. Okay, we verify that. Okay. And then we close our classification tool. We don't need that anymore. Now what we need to do is those polygons that we just created, we need to convert those vectors into a raster and add that to our tree over here. So we are going to go up to vector, and we're going to go down to map type conversion and go map type and go vector to raster. And we're going to come over here for our input vector map, which is the one we just created using those polygons. And you'll see clear cut training. Alright, so you click on clear cut training, and then you give it a new name that's going to show up in this tree. And we can call it, let's just call it clear cut training RAS. Alright. And then for source of raster values, click ATTR for attributes. Then in the attributes tab, you're going to change the ATT parameter to cat, and the name of the column used for raster category labels, class. Oh, that's going to show up periodically, sorry. On your computer it won't. It has nothing to do with this software, it has to do with my computer. Alright, so you have cat and class entered in those 2 fields, and now you can select run. Now you see over here on the left, it has added our clear cut training RAS to the tree, and has put our training polygons into our study area. Now, here's where we have just done supervised classification. That's creating those polygons. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take these polygons, and it is going to go against the satellite image, and it's going to start mapping out all the different reflective signatures of all the different pixels in this image or in the study area, and it's going to create an internal table of all those values. It's called a signature file. So our next step is we're going to start the supervised classification. So you're going to go to imagery. Stop that. Going to go to imagery, go down to classify image, and you're going to input for supervised MLC. For the truth you are going to select the raster image that you just created in the past step, which is this clear-cut training ras. Now for the input imagery group, you're going to select your PSL SAT 2016, and for your subgroup you're going to select the clear-cut 2016. Now for the output file name for your results of your signatures, you give it a name. So we're going to call this clear-cut sig for clear-cut signatures. And then you hit run. So it's creating that signature file that has all the reflectant values based on your training session. Once that's done, you can close. Okay. Then you're going to go back up to imagery over here, and you're going to select classify image again. But now you're going to select maximum likelihood classification. It's an extra assurance that you made good selections in your training polygons. So it's going to maximize the efficiency of that reflectance, and it's gonna tighten your information, make it a little better. At least it's supposed to do that. All right, so select maximum likelihood classification. Brings up this box. You're going to select that group again, which is the PSL SAT 2016. You're going to select your subgroup, the clear-cut 2016 in this case. Then you're going to select the file that contains the signatures, which is what we just created, which is the clear-cut sig. And then you're going to give it a result file. Okay? And here we're going to call this clear-cut 2016 results. And then you're going to hit run. And then it's going to create another raster up here in your table. So let's close this, come over to our layer manager, and you'll see clear-cut 2016 results. Now, these are the colors that it does automatically. It's not the colors that we chose when we did our polygons. It chose its own color values to use for its classification. You can go in, this is highly optional if you want to change the colors to make them more representative, which we will. But you notice, here is all the ice and snow. Okay, this green are our barren areas, which it did look like it did a pretty good job doing that. But you notice it, see some of the other, that yellow that we created over here, there's some yellow in there because those values were close enough to these values so it got classed the same, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's other. If you were more precise in your training, then you would have more accurate information. But if you notice the dark bluish, I guess it's purple, that's our forest. And then the light blue areas, this light blue areas is probably our clear cut. And then this color right here is the blue, is our water. So what we're going to do is we're going to change those colors so they look more normal to our study. All right, so you're going to go to Raster in the layer manager, and you're going to select manage colors, and you're going to come over here and manage color rules interactively. All right, so you get this little thing. This shows you basically what's in your main display. These are the ranges of colors for those particular reflectance values. But all you need to do is change the whole number. Okay, so if you can't remember what your whole numbers were for your classifications, come back over to display, come up here to the query tool, query raster, and then use your pointer. Let's click on the ice and snow. Well, I know forest is one, so let's click on a forest, which is that purple, which is class number 1, value number 1. And we're going to change this color to our forest. Okay. Then we're going to come back over to display tool, use our query. I think we made clear cut 2. Clear cut is number 2, so come back over here and scroll down till you get to 2. Click on 2. Make that the light green for our clear cut. And then now I'm probably a little foggy, so let's go to, I think it did water, right? I think we did water. So let's click on the water. Yeah, water's 3. So come over here, scroll down until you get to 3. Make that light blue for the water. Alright, then come back up here, do another query. Let's do the ice and snow. That should be 4. Come down to 4. Click on that. Let's just make that white. Barren, which is this green, which is 5. Come down to 5. And since barren's brown, we'll make that kind of that color there. And then finally, other should be our last class, class 6. Click on that, and let's give it a mauve color, just so it stands out. Alright, so anything between these values, it will change all of those to light colors. There's a slight variation, but we're telling it between this color and between this value and this value, making them all the same color. So apply, and you'll see your image change to the colors that you chose. Click OK, and you can close this query tool out. Okay, so we organized the colors so they make a little bit more geographical sense to us. Now, there's one step. If you are going to use these images in GIS software, such as QGIS or ESRI's ArcGIS, or whatever GIS applications that you're using, you can export these images that you just created out to their own Tiff. And basically what you do is, let's do this, so let's go to the clear cut 2016 results, right click that since it was selected, and then go down to export, and then you can, this is the name of the raster map that we're exporting the results, and then you can go to whatever GIS directory that you use. I'm just going to put them in here for that. I'm going to call that clear cut 2016. Save. Close. Then I'm going to come down to this this band, this composite that we made with bands 5, 6, and 2. Right click those, export that. Same kind of thing. Select your directory. I wish GRASS would allow me to just remember the last directory I was in, and then give it a name. You can call it Rainier. Let's just call it 562. Click OK. Then you can bring then you can bring those images into your GIS software for visualization, for mapping. Okay, so you've done a supervised classification, but we don't see anything that's useful. Well, I'll show you something other than visual. If you come up to the results up here and you right click the results and come down where it says report raster statistics, now you'll see the meats and potatoes of your analysis. So click on that and it will generate a report. Let's make this box a little bigger. And then you see your classes: forestry, clear cut, water, ice, snow, barren, other. Then if you scroll to the right, you'll notice it gives it to you in hectares. Okay, so we have for clear cut, we have 23,887 hectares of clear cut area. That's only in your study area, not the whole scene. Okay, and then we have 122,000 plus hectares of forested. Now, you can convert that to acres or square miles or whatever you need to do for your reporting. The percentages that you see over here are the percentages of the study area. So forested makes up 60.99% of the study area. The ice and snow is about 5.8% is ice and snow. I did an evaluation of Glacier National Park, and I took the values from 2000. I took satellite image starting from 2000 all the way up through 2019, and I measured the percentages of ice and snow coverage in Glacier National Park for the month of May of each one of those years, and basically did the math and showed whether the ice and snow is disappearing or staying the same or getting more. Well, people are concerned with the melting of glaciers and stuff, and they said that Glacier National Park was going to disappear by 2020. Well, I did this analysis and it shows, and my website, MyPhysical World, not my website, but my Facebook page, I did a report showing that the amount of ice and snow is actually increasing in Glacier National Park. Well, I used the same process, except I was a little bit more particular about the ice and snow when I was creating my training polygons. And but anyway, you can use these percentages in anything that you're doing in your study. Now, the next step that you would do in terms of doing a supervised classification, you're done. The next step is you can go in and import images from other years. So I can import the images for 2019 into this project that we have set up right now. And I can run this classification that we made against the 2019 images, and you can map the differences, how many acres of clear cut in 2016 versus how many acres of clear cut in 2019. And you can give your customer that type of report. But anyway, hey, I know this was long and drawn out and really kind of boring in a way, but it gives you a workflow of doing a supervised classification in GRASS GIS 7.6.1. Thanks for coming. See you later.